Welcome to the Lancastrian Old English Sheepdog Club Chorley Sports Centre on November the 6th, 1988. The class in progress at the moment is Veteran Dog. The judge for the day is Miss Dorothy Malins of Embarges fame. Her first champion was made up in 1972, which was champion Nan of the Embarges, who was by champion Reculver Christopher Robin out of Bess of the Embarges. Her second champion was made up in 1973. He was champion Mr. Blue Dan of the Embarges, who was by Fox Twist Mr. Jumbo out of Blueberry of the Embarges. Another dog of Dorothy's, Barnaby of the Embarges, became a Norwegian and Swedish champion. He was by champion Bevere Proud Monarch and out of Bess of the Embarges. Also she had international and Nordic champion Big Deal of the Embarges, who was one of Dorothy's breeding, who took his title before he was 10 months old. Dorothy now successfully shows Lancashire heelers. Incidentally, my first dog 33 years ago was a Lancashire heeler. Now I have bobtails, a definite role reversal. It's very nice to see the oldies being proudly shown by their owners, because I do love a day out when they're being used to being shown. The winners in Veteran Dog. First, Cathy McHale's Hawthorne Blue Cerebus, who is 11 years old. He was bred by Mrs. Heath by Bocot Blue Sir Henry of Bobsacre out of Cuddles of Shallock. Second was Mrs. Booth's Splendid Prize Guy, who is 9 years old. Next in the ring is Minor Puppy Dog. There are 9 entries in this class altogether. Interestingly enough, it's nice to go back to years ago and have a description of the Old English Sheepdog. This one is particularly interesting. It's by Aubrey Hotwood. He's talking about the correct type. Gives the breed standard, which is fairly similar to the breed standard now. And he says, from the breed standard, he's built up for himself a mental picture of the ideal bobtail as he exists in my imagination. Alas, he says, I have not seen him in the flesh, much less owned or bred him. Artist and modeller alike have failed to reproduce him to my satisfaction. They hold that I'm unnecessarily exacting, hinting moreover that it's easier to practice than preach. Breed one, laughs the artist, and I'll paint him for you. Show me your ideal, says the sculptor, and I'll model him. Some day, perchance, if the gods are very good, I may. Meanwhile, I must content myself, perforce, with a mere word portrait. Picture to yourself, then, a big shaggy skull, with plenty of width between the small, close-hanging ears. Neither too flat, nor yet too dome-shaped, but gently rounded, capacious and rather squarely formed. It surmounts a pair of intelligent eyes of the deepest shade of brown, set well apart, and is divided by a clearly defined stop, from a strong square muzzle ending in a big black nose, beneath which is set a large, white and even-spaced teeth, with mathematical precision, one above the other. Shade it outwards from white to richest blue, then add a stiff, strong grey beard. Now set this head upon a longish, heavily coated neck which arches gracefully into the sloping shoulders, with just a hint of narrowness at their points. Facing your model, carry your eye down the forelegs, straight and strong as iron bars, their big flat bone buried in a wealth of shaggy hair inside and out, right down to the small round feet with their thick hard pads and well-arched toes. Note how he stands on them, for all his strength and apparent weight, as lightly as a cat, with never a symptom of weakness in the pastern joints. Stand now a little distance off and take a broadside view. Your first impression is one of sturdy squareness. From shoulder to rump the back slopes gently upwards. The stoutness of the loin and the rounded breadth of the muscular hindquarters counterbalanced by the depth of brisket and the well-sprung ribs, where the heart and breathing apparatus have ample room for play. No symptom of the docked tail shows beneath the profuseness of coat, which smothers everything save the clearly defined angle of the hocks, set unusually low but not too close together. Next run your hands in fancy through the heavy coat and tell me how I shall best describe it. It is very long, it is very harsh, it is not in the least curly, neither is it any degree straight. It is above all things shaggy, and conveys an impression of growing profusely all sorts of ways. Underneath is an immensely thick and not so harsh in texture. You would judge it to be extremely weatherproof and impervious to any weather, capable even of resisting the vagaries of our English climate. The colour scheme is blue and white, the former predominating. A blaze of pure white lies on the skull and muzzle, collar, chest and forepaws, but the remainder of the body and head is so wondrous a tint of blue that nature seems to have overlaid her work with a thin veneer of hoarfrost in the moonlight. Small wonder that my friend the artist deemed me too exacting. Dorothy is now making her mind up for the final placings in Minor Puppy Dog. First in Minor Puppy Dog is Jenny Joyce's Curgelly Shipmate, bred by Pauline Woodford Mills, by Simberdale Henry Higgins, out of Curgelly Missy Moments. Second was Cathy McHale's Barnaby Machiavelli. Third, Mr. and Mrs. Farquhar's Bavarian Music Maker Spiker. Fourth, Anne Hodgson's Ragglebarn Just William. And VHC was Elaine Georgian's Jedep Ultimate Warrior. Now in the ring is Puppy Dog, and entered in Puppy Dog there are 5. Interestingly enough, the said author says about movement, lead him out upon the grass now, unhook his chain and let him go loose. He gallops like a racehorse, hind legs well under him, active and lithe beyond suspicion, and fast enough to head the wildest Welsh sheep that can ever lead revolt upon his native mountains. But call him to heel, and note his action as he shuffles along beside you. It is exactly that of a bear. He moves like a trained American pacer, the fore and hind leg on either side of him working simultaneously, with a quaintly indescribable waddle. A long stride which waddles the whole hindquarters from loin to toe every step. Interestingly enough, how pacing was the norm then, and in this day and age a dog is often penalised for pacing. Dorothy is now making up her mind for positions for puppy dog. The winners in puppy dog. First, Mr. and Mrs. Farquhar's Bavarian music maker Spiker, bred by Mrs. Burns, by champion Bavarian Galloping Gourmet, out of Bavarian Love Me Do. Second, Mr. and Mrs. Turner's Kayese Venture. Third, Elaine Georgian's Jedep Ultimate Warrior. And fourth, Bob and Miss J. Cass's I Puritani with Malcro. Now in the ring is Junior Dog. There are 6 entries in this class. Incidentally, on the question of movement again, under the heading of general appearance, we learn that the dog must be very elastic in his gallop, but in walking or trotting he has a characteristic ambling or pacing movement. And it will be found that these two characteristics are virtually synonymous, for I have never yet known a bobtail whose slow walking action had the genuine bear-like roll to fail in elasticity of gallop when free to move at speed. The trained eye will recognise without hesitation this liberty of walking action even in the cramped area of the show ring, and infallibly argue from it how the dog would gallop if space permitted. If any of you are interested in the history of your dog's pedigrees, you can go back generations to the early 1900s, late 1800s even, finding some very interesting dogs. One dog that comes to mind is Wall-Eyed Bob. Date of birth, breeder, pedigree unknown. But rumours credit him with having once changed hands in a public house for a sovereign, when he became the property of Mr. Thomas and finally of Mrs. Fair Foss. He was last exhibited in 1898 and carried everything before him, though his age must have been at least 15. He died shortly afterwards, retaining his wonderful coat and iron constitution right to the last. Dorothy is now seeking out her winners and placings in Junior Dog. The winners in Junior Dog. First is Pat and Bernard Bradley's Langston Charlie Boy of Hebrae, bred by J. Hicks, by Champion Hebrae Rock on Tommy, out of Langston Playmate. Second, Mr. and Mrs. Edwards, Nahum Fred the Weatherman. Third, Mr. and Mrs. Carter's Blue Rise King Arthur. Fourth, Ann Turner's Barkston Bond. And VHC, Mr. and Mrs. Hassett's Oak Farm Orpheus at Full Neck. Into the ring now comes Special Yearling Dog. In this class there is an entry of 4.
Hello, darling, how are you?
As I sit here watching this video, it seems to me that the dogs are getting smaller, but yet getting more compact, getting a nicer shape of animal. This young fellow'd rather be playing outside, I think.
More fun than these anyway. They're more fun than these anyway.
Make your mind up time for special Yearling Dog. And the winners, first Pat and Bernard Bradley's Langston Charlie Boy Hibray, winner of Junior Dog. Second, Mr. and Mrs. Edwards, name Fred the Weatherman. Third, Mr. and Mrs. Mawson's Babbitt and Bergen's Blue at Kiddywood. And fourth, Mrs. Gray's Starjander the Impresario. Next in the ring we have Maiden Dog. There are 7 in this class, 1 new dog to be seen. The dogs are managing to move extremely well considering they haven't got a mat. Dorothy now deciding the placings in Maiden Dog. Just asking them to move once more. And the winners in Maiden Dog. First is Kathy McHale's Barnaby Machiavelli, bred by Ronnie and Rita Ashcroft, by Weatherproof of Barnaby out of Barnaby Silver Wedding. Second, Mr. and Mrs. Ellaby's Shape First Statesman. Third, Bob and Miss J. Cass's I Puritani with Malcro. And fourth, Mrs. Bowden's Halsall Solid Silver. Novice Dog, now in the ring. 5 in the class. All dogs have been seen. The winners, Ann Turner's Barkston Bond, bred by the owner, by Champion Simmerdale Henry Higgins out of Barkstone Valentine Moonbaby. Second, Mr. and Mrs. Ellaby's Shape First Statesman. Third, Mr. and Mrs. Turner's Cassie. Fourth, Bob Cass's I Puritani with Malcro. Now in the ring we have Graduate Dog. There are 4 entries in this class. All dogs have been seen. And the winners in Graduate Dog. First, Mr. and Mrs. Mawson's Babiton Bergen's Blue at Kiddywood, bred by Crosby and Shaw by Oak Farm Fair and Square at Tumbletop, out of Champion Deacon Bonnie Bluebell. Second, Mr. and Mrs. Ellaby's Shape First Statesman. Third, Mr. and Mrs. Hassett's Oak Farm Orpheus at Full Neck. And fourth, Mrs. Gray's Starjander the Impresario. In the ring now is Postgraduate. In this class there are 11 entries. Going back to the ancestry of most dogs, in fact I would think every modern bobtail, years back, if you follow the pedigrees back, you'll follow the pedigree back to another champion, Sir Cavendish, who was born on May the 29th, 1887, by Sir Caradoc out of Dame Ruth. The breeder was Dr. Edwards Kerr. The description of him says, "This excellent dog, the property of Dr. Locke, did much to revive the interest in the breed, of which he was for many years a shining example. And it is interesting to note the quaint resemblance of his picture bears to the Renagle painting of 1803. From 1888 to 1894, there were but few classes for sheepdogs at leading shows, in which Sir Cavendish's name was missing from the winning list. Amongst the most notable of his successes may be recorded by the following. First, open class at Warwick, Barn Elms, Swansea, and Birmingham in 1888, and at Gloucester, Cardiff, Brighton and Crystal Palace in 1890. First, in the challenge class at Liverpool, Crufts, Bath, Manchester, the Kennel Club, Birkenhead, Gloucester and Crystal Palace in 1891, and at Bath, Leeds, Manchester, the Kennel Club, Crystal Palace and Crufts in 1892. In 1893 and 1894 he was first prize winner at Birmingham, at Preston and at Portsmouth. I wonder if exhibitors do actually go back and study the pedigrees of their dogs from years ago. It is a fascinating hobby. I found hours of satisfaction in tracing my dog's pedigrees back. The stewards today for Dorothy are Mr. Bert Battersby, who has the Bettle and Fell bobtails, along with his wife Betty, and also Mrs. Lynbourne. Who, along with her husband John, have the Debdale bobtails. Also, I believe now John has Irish wolfhounds. Champion Watchboy is another dog featured prominently in pedigrees of the dogs in the early 1900s. He was born in July 1890 and he was bred by Mr. Abbott. His father was Strascathero Bouncing Bob out of a bitch called Nellie II. He sired an awful lot of good dogs in that era. Another dog around that time was Harkaway, born in June 1891. He was especially remarkable apparently for his excellent coat, which he transmitted to many of his descendants. Indeed, the Harkaway coat apparently was still easily recognisable in subsequent generations from this strain. He sired excellent animals apparently as Cupid's Dart, Sir Hugo and Orson. But I have a painting of him here in front of me, and his coat, to my mind, had a varying degree of straightness. But of course this is the artist's license. And Dorothy giving the dogs a thorough going over. As you'll hear in her interview at the end of this video, she was happy with the dogs this time than when she judged 2 years ago, which is hopefully a good sign for the breed. Inspection now for the final placings in postgraduate dog. As is the rule with Dorothy's judging today, which she will probably ask every dog just to move once again to satisfy herself on the move, the correct movement fore and aft of each exhibit.
Way up or down? Up. You're leaning on it. Is that straight? Yeah. Still straight. Yeah. Road. Not helpful when you get to the limit of the industry, yeah. Good on you.
First in postgraduate dog is Mr. and Mrs. Burns's Blue Rise Bossa Nova, bred by the owner by Champion Hibrave Rock on Tobby out of Prospect Blue Surprise. Second, Mr. Lee's Barnaby Blue Brigand. Third was Milligan's Homewood True Blue. Fourth, Skelton's Sherry Blue Something Special. And VHC Elaine Georgian's Jedup Borges Return. Into the ring now comes Limit Dog. Quite a big class. There's an entry of 17 overall. In fact, it's the biggest dog class of the day. Another champion of yesteryear was Victor Cavendish. He was born on January the 1st, 1897, by Young Watch out of a bitch called Grey Queen. The breeders were Messrs Pickett and Shaw. And it says it is worthy of note that Champion Watchboy plays an important part in this dog's pedigree, having sired both Young Watch and Grey Queen, and undoubtedly transmitted many of his own excellent qualities to this grandson. The latter's illustrious ancestors also include Champion Sir Cavendish, his maternal grandsire. Victor Cavendish, in addition to innumerable firsts and specials, is credited with the following challenge prizes: Kennel Club 1899, Earl's Court 1899, Crew 1900, Aquarium 1900, Alexandra Palace 1900, Crufts 1901, Aquarium 1902, Kennel Club 1902, and People's Palace 1903. He took 42 first prizes and 25 specials at 28 shows, winning the Old English Sheepdog Challenge Cup at the club shows on 3 separate occasions. To us modern generation bobtailers, this does not seem a lot of significant wins, but when you think of how few dogs there were and how many few shows to compete there were, this will be quite an achievement. Another very old champion was Rough Weather, and he was born in August 1900. He was by a dog called Sir James, out of a bitch called Daphne, and the breeder was the famous Mrs. Fairfoss. And it says, to quote, "Still in the prime of his youth, this well-known dog has already accounted for upwards of 150 first and special prizes, which includes several for the best of any variety and more than one for the best dog in show. His challenge certificates were gained at Crufts 1903, Kennel Club 1903, Botanic 1904, and Birmingham 1904. The first 3 of these, awarded by 3 different judges, have entitled him to his place in the honourable list of bobtail champions." So in those days, to get 3 certificates under 3 different judges was obviously a notable achievement. Incidentally, it's very nice that so many people have turned up to this show and in safety. It was a horrendous foggy morning, very bad for travelling, and a lot of exhibits had come from a long, long way. The judge herself told me that she'd met some horrendous weather on her way here. And also Mrs. Jones and her husband, who travelled from the depth of Wales to come, said they met some horrendous foggy weather. We hope that everybody got home safely, because it was going foggy again at night.
In a minute.
People are congratulated for getting there safely and having their dogs looking so well.
Give it a minute,
It just shows what length we nutty bobtailers will go to get to a show. Where if we had to go to work, I think we'd abandon ship. When you actually tot up the mileage you do in a year when you're campaigning a dog, at the end of it, you sometimes wonder whether you're quite sane. A very close friend of mine, Marjorie, has just remarked that sane people do not own Old English sheepdogs. I think she's just about right. It's very nice to see how well-mannered an Old English sheepdog can be. This big fella, and he is a big fella, he's always a gentleman, always gentle. He's a credit to his owner. Another old-time bobtail was Champion Dairymaid. Again, date of birth, pedigree and breeder unknown. And when you're researching pedigrees, this is highly frustrating, as I've found to my cost. It says this typical bitch came from the county of Surrey into the hands of Mr. William G. Weeger in 1891 and died in the same ownership some 4 years later. She was practically invincible in her day, and her many wins included championships at the Kennel Club, Birmingham and Crufts shows in 1892 and 1893. Incidentally, it's interesting to know that the Kennel Club and the Crufts show were two separate shows then, whereas now the Kennel Club show is Crufts. Dorothy has now gone over all the dogs in Limit Dog and is now making not an easy decision for her final placings. Again, I would think she would move them once to satisfy herself on the correct movement. We're just panning down the line at each dog individually, perhaps making up our own minds at home. It is in the hands of the judge on the day, and that is what you pay your entry fees for, and must be accepted. Otherwise, I feel you ought to stay at home and let your dog be a fireside champion in your eyes. We now have the winners in Limit Dog. First, Poppy Jones's Wenalt What's Wanted. Bred by the owner, by champion Tinny Coed Caraddock ab Feigwish, out of Wenalt, Ben's Girl. Second, Mesdames McAnilly and Henderson's Southview Don Giovanni. Third, Mr. and Mrs. Shaw's Belvedere Little Boy Blue of Shawley. Fourth, Kathy McHale's Woodmoss Romulus, and VHC Pat and Vic Guess Lamicus Bosun. The next class in the ring are the big boys. Open Dog. Again, a fairly strong class of 11. There are 6 champions in the lineup. Just panning down the lineup so we can have a look at every dog individually. It is interesting to note how fashion is changing again. In bygone days, dogs were heavily marked, and then the fad was for all white heads. Beginning to see the blue ears and blue eye patches coming back, hopefully bringing more pigment to improve eye colour and alleviating the deafness problem, which has been proven, as with all white cats. Maybe now the popularity to the general public has declined, the caring breeders can concentrate on the quality, not the quantity, of our lovely breed. But a lot of these dogs that I've been telling you about from bygone days are very heavily marked. One I have in front of me at the moment is Champion Lady Scaramouche. Wonder if Jenny Joyce got that name for her Raynham Scaramouche. He was born in April 1893, again by Champion Watchboy out of Lady Cavendish. The breeder was a Dr. Locke. I quote, "of notable pedigree, for Lady Cavendish was the daughter of Champion Sir Cavendish. Celebrated bitch was exhibited for several years by Mr. H. Dixon with quite exceptional excess. Among her long lists of firsts and specials, the following challenge prizes are included: 1895 Bristol, 1896 Crufts and Crystal Palace, 1897 Crufts and Crystal Palace, 1898 Crystal Palace, 1899 Birmingham, and 1901 Richmond. Another very heavily marked bitch was Champion Dame Barbara, who I named my Darrasfield Dame Barbara after. Her date of birth, pedigree and breeder are also unknown, but she was for many years the property of Sir Humphrey de Trafford, who was pres the Old English Sheepdog Club. The de Traffords, incidentally, was a family that lived 3 miles from where I live now, and Sir Humphrey was one of the relations that went down south and was also associated with Ascot Racecourse. Dame Barbara earned her title of champion at Crystal Palace 1898, Birmingham 1898 and Liverpool 1899. During these 2 years she was a well-known winner at leading shows. I am still trying to get more information on her from Sir Humphrey's descendants who still live locally. Now it's time for the final assessment for the placings in Open Dog. Everybody, of course, brushing furiously, trying to get the best out of the dog to catch the judge's eye. But of course, as any respected judge knows, she knows what's under the coat. But even so, it's nice to have the shape enhanced. We have a worthy winner in Open Dog. First, Terry and John Simmons' champion Greyfell Storm Warning, bred by Mr. and Mrs. Sculthorpe, by champion Tinnicoed Caradoc Abfeguish, out of champion True Shape Effervescent at Greyfell. Second is Vivian Stucks, champion Pennyfell's Lord Lovelot. Third was Mr. and Mrs. Monk's Pickersley Prince. Fourth, Jill Haywood's Duncan Dashing Duke. And VHC Miss Ellaby's Wordsworth Boy Blue. There's a nice shot of John and Terry's dog. This is the Lancastrian Stakes, open to champion dogs owned by the members of the Lancastrian. There are 4 dogs entered, but only 2 to contest. One of the dogs has already been seen in the last class. I will say I do love those dark markings on a bobtail. A particular favourite of mine who I lost a few months ago had markings like that. It gives them terrific character. Dorothy now deciding between the 2 champions. And the winner of the stakes is Vivian Stucks, champion Pennyfell's Lord Lovelot, bred by the owner, by champion Southview Saracen of Nighttimber, out of Holdview Rambling Rose. Second was Miss Johnson's champion, Oak Farm Oberon. We have the winners now in Special Beginner's Dog. First was Mrs. Lee's Barnaby Bow Brigand, bred by Ronnie and Rita Ashcroft, by Weatherproof of Barnaby. Second, Mr. and Mrs. Carter's Blue Rise King Arthur, and third, Cathy McHale's Barnaby Machiavelli. We now have the lineup for the dog CC. In the lineup we have from Veteran Dog, Cathy McHale's Hawthorne Bruce Erebus. From Minor Puppy Dog we have Jenny Joyce's Curdially Shipmate. the winner of Junior and Special Yearling Dog, Patton Bernard Bradley's Langston Charlie Boy Hibray. From Postgraduate we have Mr. and Mrs. Burns' Blue Rise Bossa Nova. From Limit we have Poppy Jones's Wenalt What's Wanted. From Open Dog we have Terry and John Simmons's Champion Greyfell Storm Warning. And second from Open Dog we have Vivian Stuck's Champion Pennyfell's Lord Lovelot. It looks now that Dorothy has made her mind up for the tickets for the dogs. And the ticket goes to Terry and John Simmons' Greyfell Storm Warning, who was bred by Mr. and Mrs. Sculthorpe by Champion Craddock Abwet Wish out of Champion True Shape Effervescent at Greyfell. The reserve CC winner came from Limit Dog, Poppy Jones's Wenalt What's Wanted. Once again by Champion Tinicoid Craddock Abwet Wish, who unfortunately is now abroad, and he's out of Wenalt Ben's Girl. The CC winner taken off by his Prouder. Now on to the ladies. The first class is Veteran Bitch. There are 4 entries. It's nice to see these old ladies having a day out. This looks suspiciously like Mr. and Mrs. McMahon's Alwentine Tia Maria, who I remember coming out in puppy quite a few years ago. Seems incredible really that the bitches you've seen, and the dogs for that matter, you've seen in veteran in puppy over the years, are now coming out in veteran. It just makes you realise how little time you really have with your dogs. You should enjoy them while you've got them. You wouldn't believe this, but while we're doing this commentary on the video, the lead from the mic is being tormented by a white Persian cat. Make your mind up time now for Veteran Bitch. Not an easy decision. Who wants to say one veteran is better than another? Well, they're all obviously loved, but we now have the winners. And the first is Mrs. Mawson's Chertsey Lady, who was bred by J. Dean, by champion tumble top trademark of Denim Blue, out of Linleyit, Dolly Daydream. The second was Ann Turner's Barkston Valentine Moon Baby. Third is Ivor Fee's Oak Farm Vanity Fair of Nordic Blue. And four, Mr. and Mrs. McMahon's Alwentine Tia Maria. Into the ring now comes Minor Puppy Bitch. There are 11 entries. Going back to the Dog CC winner and Reserve CC winner. The CC winner, champion Greyfell Storm Warning. His father, as I said, was champion Tinnacoed Caradog Fegwish, who was by Jean Collins's champion dog, Jed Forrest Don Carlos. And out of Joan Reel's champion bitch, Tinnacoed and Pridfirth. I did a detailed pedigree research on him on Caradog 2 years ago. Storm Warning's mum was champion True Shape Effervescent at Greyfell, bred by Lillette Lewis, and she was by champion Barteen's Most Happy Fellow at Jennard's, out of a bitch called Sweet Charity of True Shape. The Reserve CC winner came from Limit Dog, Well What's Wanted, who again was by Caradog, and his mum, Wenelt Ben's girl, who Mrs. Jones kindly rang me up to give me some background information, is by Wenelt Sonny Jim, out of Christina Sunday Sprite, whose mum was Nina Underwood's champion Wenelt Embold, which most of us will remember. Ben's girl herself, Mrs. Jones says, was an ugly duckling in a litter of 9 puppies, who grew up to be a swan and has produced some lovely puppies for her. She is also the mother to champion Wenelt Wiley Star, whose father was Wenelt Western Star. Incidentally, when I spoke to Mrs. Jones, she had spent the whole previous day grooming bobtails. And at 81 years old, that's no mean achievement. And whilst we were on the phone, I heard dogs barking. And I was told that that was Mr. Jones taking the dogs for a walk. When one gets tired of grooming old English sheepdogs when you're 40 odd, makes you feel ashamed. As Mrs. Jones said, there isn't enough hours in the day for her. And the miles they do travelling to shows is just unbelievable. I will say my favourite classes at these shows are minor puppy and veteran, from one end of the scale to the other. I think my preference actually is for veteran. The dogs have stayed with the people all their lives. Whereas in minor puppy classes, one sometimes wonders if the pup doesn't come up to showing standards, does it stay at home with its owner for the rest of its life? Or is it passed on, another pup selected for exhibition? We have now come to the final placings for Minor Puppy Bitch. Dorothy having another look while we pan the line-up to look at every puppy. And the final placings in Minor Puppy Bitch. First, Mrs. Tabara's Wholesale Tea Time at Fireline, bred by Kay Sharman, by Barnaby Groomsman out of Halsall Bittersweet. Second, Mrs. Watkins, Dervan's Dreamfinder of Poppydale. Third, Anne Hodgson's Ragglebarn, Just Gemina. Fourth, Mrs. Leeson's Paddy Bear, Cindy Princess. And VHC, Mr. and Mrs. McFarlane's Claire's Lucky Star. Next we have Class 16, which is Puppy Bitch. 7 entries in this class. Another heavily marked bitch from yesteryear was Champion Bouncing Lass. She was born in June 1899 by Young Watch out of Peggy Primrose, bred by Mr. Butterworth. To quote, "Another direct descendant of Champion Watchboy. This bitch will go down in posterity as one of the best bobtails ever seen. She was purchased from her breeder, Mr. Macbeth, and won her first 3 challenge certificates at Hinckley in 1901, Manchester 1902 and Aquarium 1902. She subsequently became the property of Messrs. Tilley and added championship wins to her score at the Crystal Palace, Birmingham, Liverpool, Birkenhead, Crufts, Leamington and Richmond. In 1902 she won the Brewers and Lord Mayor's Cup at Birmingham, and in 12 months accounted for 9 cups, 11 medals and over 100 first prizes. On 11 occasions she took special prizes for the best exhibit in the show and was sold to America for a record price in 1903. That same year she took 2 firsts, a championship and the Vanderbilt Cup in New York, repeating the performance in 1904. She is now engaged in upholding the honour of the old country in the show rings of the new. It is now make your mind up time in Puppy Bitch. Dorothy handling the exhibits again. She now has the final placings for Puppy Bitch. First, Mr. and Mrs. Harris's Bovallen Corn Dolly, bred by the owners, by Woolwood Sweet Talking Guy of Bovallen, out of Bovallen Bolero. Second was Eileen Wade's Debdale Peppermint Pandora of Levi Blue. Third, Mrs. Tabara's Halsall Tea Time of Fireline. And fourth, Della Oaks's Old Oak Pennylover. Very nice for Eileen Wade to be placed second in this class, as not too long ago, unfortunately, she lost a Puppy Bitch. So it's nice to see her out with a new baby. We now have Junior Bitch, strong class of 15 for the judge to run her hands over. The last old champion I had before me is champion Dolly Gray, who was born 26th of April 1901. She was by Stylish Boy out of Dolly Daydream. The breeder was Mr. Travis. To quote, "Although she is still short of 4 years old and may reasonably be expected still further to improve, this bitch, the property of Messrs. Tilly, can still hold her own in the best of company. It is therefore worthy of note that she, again, has a strong infusion of watchboy blood in her veins. He is the grandsire of her dam on the paternal side, and grandsire of her sire on both sides. Dolly Gray's record of challenge certificates already includes the following: Crufts, Liverpool, Bristol, Birmingham, and People's Palace in 1903. Crufts, Manchester, Blackpool, Bristol, Crystal Palace and Birmingham in 1904. At the Agricultural Hall in 1904 she took Crufts International Bowl for the best non-sporting dog in show. She has won 131st prizes, 200 specials and 7 cups, on 9 occasions being awarded the special for the best exhibit in show. Considering her age, the record is one of which her owners may well be proud." Unquote. It is a tremendous record that Mrs. Tilly had this dog in 1901. But even before that they had Old English sheepdogs, as they recently celebrated 100 years of the Shepton Kennels. And only recently, unfortunately, Miss Florence Tilly died. Many of our previous days' dogs are direct descendants from the Shepton Kennels. It's very unusual for anybody to have a pedigree that goes back enough to see this without a Shepton dog in it. The president of the Lancastrian Old English Sheepdog Club actually sent a dog down to the Shepton Kennels. He was born in 1945, notably Shepton's sonny boy of Marley. Mrs. Booth still has Old English sheepdogs, and this year she will have had Old English sheepdogs for 50 years. She brought her first bobtail over to England when she was a land girl during the war, and from then on has produced under the famous Marley prefix. Now we're panning the lineup of Junior Bitch, just having another look at the dogs while Dorothy decides on her final placings. We now have winners in Junior Bitch. First is John Bruin's Blunsdon Blue Moon, bred by the owner, by Piggersly Prince, out of Blunsdon Stormy Beauty. Second, Mr. and Mrs. Spurlings with Love from Boundalong. Third, Mr. and Mrs. Cams, Kellen J, Midnight Magic of Whiteshore. Fourth, Mrs. Angus's Dervance Disco Dancer, and VHC John Bruin's Blunsdon Bonnie Lass of the Liaises. The winner again in Junior Bitch. We now have in the ring Special Yearling Bitch. Entry of 17, 6 new dogs to be seen. As far as showing is concerned, a separate class for the Old English Sheepdog was first given to them in 1873 at Curzon Hall in Birmingham, over 100 years ago. The response apparently was scarcely encouraging, for there were only 3 entries, and the quality was so moderate that the judge, Mr. M.B. Wynne, only considered himself justified in awarding a second prize. Interestingly enough, Mr. Rawdon Lee, who owns the Cavendish, said he's no optimist but does not consider the bobtail a great success as a show dog. Personally, he writes, I do not believe that this variety of dog is destined to obtain any great hold on our human affections. His disposition is at present not quite suitable for a domestic companion, though improved associations might remedy this, and his long shaggy coat, especially the abundance of hair on his legs, must be for reasons of cleanliness make him unfitted as an inhabitant of the drawing room, which, popularised as the club wishes him to be, would be his place. This, surely, 100 years on, would say the same. Dorothy has now gone over the special yearling bitches and is making her mind up for her placings. The winners in special yearling bitch. First was John Bruin's Blunsdon Blue Moon, the winner of junior bitch. Second, Spurling's With Love from Boundalong. Third, Mr. and Mrs. Farquhar's Bavarian Kitty Fisher Spiker. Fourth, Miss Sutherland's Jedep Wishbone Whisper. And third, Cam's Callanjay Midnight Magic of White Shore. This, now in the ring, is Maiden Bitch. All bitches have been seen in previous classes. And the winners in Maiden Bitch. First, Mr. and Mrs. Spurling's With Love from Boundalong, bred by Mrs. Byfleet, by Brackenholme Snowman at Applebob's, out of Boundalong Silver Lining. Second, Mr. and Mrs. Harris's Bavallon Corn Dolly. Third, Mrs. Watkins' Dervant's Dreamfinder of Poppyvale. Fourth, Mrs. Leeson's Paddy Bear, Cindy Princess, and VHC Della Oaks's Old Oak Penny Lover. Now we move on to Novice Bitch. And the winners in Novice Bitch. Again, first, Spurling's with Luff and Bound Along, winner of Maiden Bitch. Second, Harris's Bob Allen Corn Dolly. Third, Tabara's Halsall Tea Time at Fireline. Fourth, Mrs Angus's Dervance Disco Dancer. And VHC Bruin's Blunsdon Bonny Lass of the Liaises. We now move on to Graduate Bitch. 10 entries on paper. Reading a little snippet from this old English sheepdog book again. The summary in the chapter on judging may interest you. I quote from the author. For it may chance that I shall someday have the pleasure of submitting my own exhibits to the ordeal of your judgment. It may even chance that you will award to some priceless champion of my own breeding the barren honour of a commended card. Assuming always that the process by which you reach this deplorable result is impartial, consistent and methodical, I promise in advance that I shall not complain. But don't forget to catch that first train home. Results in Graduate Bitch. First, John Bruin's Blunsdon's Blue Moon, winner of Junior and Special Yearling Bitch. Second, Miss Sutherland's Jedep Wishbone Whisper. Third, Bruin's Blunsdon's Bonny Lass of the Liaises. And fourth, Mr. and Mrs. Bell's Babiton Soul Sister. In the ring now, we have Postgraduate Bitch. Mrs. Betty Ince and Mr. Stephen Hall, the secretary of the Lancastrian, having a natter in the background. On the left-hand side of the screen I can see my husband, Mr. Williamson, sitting there pensively looking at the dogs. Quite a sad moment for me to watch this actually, because David only came for an hour and went home to look after his dog, who unfortunately we had to let have sleep the day after, his champion Darrasfield Knights Templar. As always, at the Lancastrian on offer are a great many cups and specials. Having a little treat from Mum. Anything to keep the children quiet. I think this is a very brave lady to wear such a smart black suit when handling a bobtail. Mr. Roy Cowie now in the ring. Last time I spotted him, he had this little lady round his neck as a shawl. I think he's too mean to buy a scarf, actually. This in the ring now, the handler is Miss Dorothy Brocklesby of the famous Dagenham Kennels, which her father started many years ago. She is incidentally the judge for Old English Sheepdogs next year at Crufts in 1989. This looks like the last one to be gone over in Postgraduate Bitch. And it's make your mind up time now for Postgraduate Bitch. Dorothy Malins giving them a final look over. And we'll probably, as before, just give them one final movement to be satisfied with their placings. And the winners in Postgraduate Bitch, first Henderson and McAnally's Southview White Linen, bred by Roy and Maureen Cowie, by Champion Tinnacoed Caradoc Abfegwish, out of Champion Southview Celebrity Miss. Second, Roy and Maureen Cowie's Southview Celebrity Guest. Third, Mr. and Mr. Cottrell's Southview Julia Bravo. All these three are litter sisters. Fourth was Mr. and Mrs. Clemens, Mr. and Mrs. Ford's Clemian Lady Prudence, and VHC, Mrs. Stratton's Kiddywood Love in a Mist. The winner again, Southview White Linen. Now we have into the ring Limit Bitch, an entry of 14. Taking a brief look at every bitch in the class. May I again further indulge myself in nostalgia, as it were, reading through somebody's eyes from over 100 years ago. At the end of his revelations, he actually has a chapter, the general summing up of things. And to quote, he says, "So far as the beginner is concerned, I think it may now be reasonably claimed that the ground has been fairly covered. It merely remains to sum up as concisely as may be the general hints embodied in the foregoing chapters. Learn by heart the club's description of an Old English sheepdog and the relative values of his points. They may not be perfect, but they are probably far better than any you could frame yourself. Study carefully the dogs which consistently win under the best judges, and compare them with one other and with inferior animals. Use your intelligence and cultivate your sense of proportion. Note the good points of other people's dogs and the weak points of your own. You need not necessarily publish them to the world. Don't buy a bobtail on the owner's recommendation alone. He is not always an impartial judge. Study the first principles in the science of breeding and proceed on a logical plan towards the attainment of a definite result. It is far more important to breed litters consistently above the average than to produce one champion by a fluke. Never breed from unhealthy or immature stock or from animals closely related. It is not actually a criminal offence, but ought to be made one. Moreover, you will probably lose money by it. Devote every possible care and attention to your puppies when you get them. Study the temperament and requirements of each individual, and remember that future success of the adult depends upon the present treatment of the infant. Give your dogs plenty of good food and fresh water, plenty of air and exercise, comfortable kennels, and as little medicine as possible. Keep a kennel book and record in it every item of interest. It will prove invaluable for subsequent reference. Make yourself thoroughly acquainted with all the regulations of a show before you exhibit, and fill in your entry forms legibly and correctly. Otherwise, you will become deservedly unpopular with people who take more trouble than yourself. Exhibit the best dogs you own in the best condition you can. Show them like a sportsman and win or lose with them like a gentleman. Never speak to a judge in the ring except to answer his questions. Your opinion is of no value whatever to him, but his is all important to you. Don't exhibit a dog unless you can accompany him to the show yourself, or get a reliable friend to do so for you. Don't exhibit young puppies at all. Above all things, don't suppose when you have read this book that you have mastered all there is to learn about bobtails. You haven't, nor have I. If you prove successful, as I sincerely hope you may, you will be justified in heartily congratulating yourself. If you don't, which is not impossible, you'll be quite at liberty to abuse me. And so, my patient friends, I take my leave, wishing you, one and all, the best of luck. Unquote. Make your mind up time now shortly for Limit Bitch. Everybody standing to attention now. Waiting for Dorothy to make her mind up for the final placings in Limit Bitch. Giving them the once over again. First in Limit Bitch, Mr. and Mrs. Hollands, Aureus Ophelia, bred by the owners, by Oak Farm Oleander of Aureus, out of Oak Farm, Forget-Me-Not. Second in the lineup is Mr. and Mrs. Reeves, Callan J, Cautious Crystal at Millard. Third was Crosby and Shaw's Babiton Highland Queen. Fourth, Jean Borland and Charlie Anderson's J-Bore Sugar Plum, and VHC, Mrs. Watkins, Jed at Foxy Lady of Poppyvale. The next class in the ring now is the big girls. The last main class of the day, Open Bitch. There are 7 entered, 1 champion bitch. I'm afraid in the lineup in the last class we had a little gremlin on the camera. Probably me when I was operating it. Switch an on button or off button instead of the opposite way round. I do apologise for the gap. This little bitch always seems to have a smile on her face. And so proud of herself. Coming to the end of a long day for these dogs. Some who've travelled hundreds of miles to be here and have a long journey back home. They must be ready for their tea and a good sleep. Looks now like this is the final little bitch to be seen in Open Bitch. Now it's make your mind up time for Open Bitch. Everybody pulling the stops out, making sure every hair is in place, while the judge finally makes her mind up. And the winners in Open Bitch. First is Alex Little's Oak Farm Beth of Bobbington, bred by Sue and Roger Goddard, by Barnaby, Champion Barnaby, I beg your pardon, troubleshooter at Old Oak, out of Oak Farm, Orleana. Second was Carol Birdsoil's Brinkley Dream Come True to Palamine. Third was Anna Esposito's Champion Durvan Stream Girl of Dalewood. Fourth was Irene Crane Duplox, Oak Farm Misbehaving of Myrene. And VHC, Bernard and Pat Bradley's Hibray Rockbun. The winner again of Open Bitch. Special beginner's bitch. All dogs have been seen in this class. Just deciding the placings. And first in Special Beginner's Bitch is Henderson and McAnally's Southview White Linen, winner of Postgraduate Bitch. Second, Spurling's With Love from Bound Along. Third was Watkins' Dervan's Dreamfinder of Poppy Vale. And fourth was Miss Wakefield's Nicola's Pride. We now have the challenge for the bitch certificate. In the lineup is Mawson's Chertsey Lady from Veteran, John Bruin's London Blue Moon, winner of Junior, Special Yearling and Graduate. Henderson and McAnally's Southview White Linen, winner of Postgraduate and Special Beginners. Mr. and Mrs. Holland's Aureus Ophelia from Limit. Alex Little's Oak Farm Beth of Bobbington from Open. And Carol Birdsall's Brinkley Dream Come True to Palomine, who took the second in the Open Bitch class. Dorothy, just asking them to move once more. Dorothy scrutinising every dog very carefully, even moving the puppy and the veteran, to give every dog a fair chance. It looks now like Dorothy's made up her mind. Yes, the Bitch CC winner is Mr. and Mrs. Holland's Aureus Ophelia, bred by the owners by Oak Farm Oleander of Aureus, whose sire and dam were champion Barnaby troubleshooter of Old Oak, out of Oak Farm Oleander. Oak Farm Oleander was by that lovely dog, champion Pocket Hall shoemaker of Oak Farm, out of Wood Nymph Sweet Charity. Ophelia's dam was Oak Farm Forget-Me-Not of Aureus, who was by Oak Farm Bobby Socks, out of Pocket Hall Silver Bells of Oak Farm. The reserve Bitch CC winner was Henderson and McAnally's Southview White Linen, bred by Roy and Maureen Cowie, by champion Tinnacoed Carada Gab Fegwish, out of champion Southview Celebrity Miss. Both Dog CC and Reserve Dog CC and Reserve Bitch CC were by Tinnicoid Agfewish. Champion Southview Celebrity Miss was by Champion Southview Fly By Night out of Champion Southview Society Miss. The Dog CC winner and the Bitch CC winner now are in competition for Best in Show. I think Dorothy has now made up her mind as to which will go Best in Show at the Lancastrian Championship show. Just standing back to have another look. And Best in Show goes to the Bitch, Aureus Ophelia. Congratulations. Reserve Best in Show to the Dog, Champion Greyfell Storm Warning. Photo call for the two main adult winners with the judge. The best puppy bitching show was Harris's Bove Allen Call Dolly. And the best puppy overall in show was Jenny Joyce's Kergelly Shipmate. This is for Best Veteran between Chertsey Lady and Hawthorne Blue Cerebus. And the best veteran was Cathy McHale's Hawthorne Blue Cerebus. Best maiden in show was Pat and Bernard Bradley's Langston Charlie Boy of Hibray. Seen challenging with the junior bitch winner, John Bruin's Little Bitch. That is the best puppy in show, Jenny Joyce's Kergelly shipmate. Best maiden in show, Sperling.
Enjoyed your day judging at the Lancastrian?
Very much, very much. Yes.
Good.
All day.
You've done it, yes. Now, the sound of the dogs.
Yes, it's not so bad.
Yeah.
No, I think the skulls are improving, but
Yes.
still very narrow muzzles for a lot of them. But
Yes.
then, let's say
Yeah.
bitches are much better. In fact, bitches' heads are far better than the dogs in comparison with the size.
Are they? Yes. Yeah. So that's the main problem you would feel with the breed at the moment.
Well, I have done the last few years. In
Yes.
fact, you know, I was shocked a few years ago when I felt some of the heads, you know. That,
Really?
You know, you're not the proper logs out there that they used to have.
No. So they're breeding more for coat now instead of the shape of the skulls and yes.
But the skulls in here today I found better than last time.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
you've still got your narrow muzzle, which
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
not very nice, is it?
No, it isn't.
Nice
What do you think
broad.
of soundness overall?
Yes, not so bad. It was a bit tricky because some were slipping.
Yeah.
Some couldn't cope with the floor, some could.
Yeah.
But not too bad. They only go a bit slower, you know.
Well, that's it.
They go
Yes.
charge at 90 miles an hour.
Yes, a bit of a bit of heel work really
Yeah.
would help, wouldn't it, on floors
Well,
like that?
they only go, you know, today most people go far to the car.
Yes.
Yes.
They don't follow the dog's stride, do they? Put the dog off its stride.
They're running. Well,
Yes.
they're all running. The dog, they got the dog.
Yes, they have it, so it was
Nice and
moving
steady.
properly. Yes.
But anyway, they most of them managed the floor.
They did, yes. So we're quite pleased with the entry overall.
Yes, these were the winners.
Lovely, yes, yes, that's one of the winners.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much.